the women's waiting area where there's like 100 other pregnant women, and I'm lying on the floor absolutely like grey, like my skin was grey and just so sick, and I was just lying on the floor in this waiting room surrounded by all these other pregnant women that were, going through their journey, but I was just like, I looked like death. And I just remember thinking, I am just a number in the system. No one's actually taking care of me. And that's when I knew, I was like, I know that I need that one-on-one care. Yeah. And that's what Mama gave me.
Hello everyone and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I'm Jess and we are here with a very tanned Larissa. Hello. And the wonderful Yanika, who you may know from her online store, Big Little Things. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm Yanika. I am a mum of two girls and a sausage dog. And, and I own Big Little Things and Big Little Gifting, which are online stores. And I'm also on the board of Hyperemesis Australia, which is part of my larger work surrounding raising awareness around the pregnancy condition HG and supporting people going through that. Yeah.
You go, we're both jumping in.
It's been a few weeks since we recorded, so we're very excited to be back in the hot seat. Did you always want to be a mum? Tell us about your journey to becoming a mum.
Okay, so I think in the background I always had this maternal draw, and I didn't really have like a dream, okay, when I reach this age I want to have this many kids. Nothing like that. It was just like, it'll happen and it'll be wonderful. And I think, it was totally naive. Like I had no clue. And I think,
aren't we all though?
Yeah,
right?
I know. When you look back at your first time, you're like, what was I thinking?
We always touch back on this. It's the whole idea of you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so relevant to my pregnancy journey as well. And I think when I found out I was pregnant with our eldest, so Alia, her pregnancy was an awakening, I guess, to more of you just never know what that journey will look like. And I think for me it was I was so excited. I found out very early on, around 5 weeks, and you have all those thoughts of like, what is it going to be like? How is it going to feel? Like what do you want to wear when you're pregnant? Like all these things and, superficial things and, important things. But I never heard of what was about to happen to me. Yeah. And I think in hindsight, I wish I did, but I think the journey that I went on resulted in what I'm doing now. So it's like it
had to happen this way.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. It was really
I wish
hard.
it didn't.
Yeah.
But if you had have known, it would have conjured up a whole lot of other.
Well, it's interesting because I went into my second one knowing more, and that's obviously we'll talk about in a sec. Yeah. But with the first one, I found out I was at 5 weeks, found out I was pregnant, and then I think I had maybe a week of like telling very close people, and then within 6-7 weeks I was really sick. And I thought, okay, cool, this is morning sickness. This is what everyone talks about. This is what we see on, all that kind of stuff. But then I realized that, oh, wait, it's actually affecting my everyday. And I was working on my feet. I was managing a huge team. I needed to be present and, team facing and people facing every day. But it was affecting my entire existence. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. Right? When it doesn't feel right, even if you have no idea what it is. I remember saying to my GP, like, I'm really struggling, and they just were like, oh, wait till the second trimester. I was like, okay. And then it got to about 15, 16 weeks, and I had this like nervous breakdown of going, how is my baby alive? Like I've been vomiting constantly, nausea constantly, and I just feel like I'm not
You couldn't keep anything down?
No, not even water. And I was like, there's something wrong, and why is no one listening to me. And it wasn't until I fainted in my doctor's waiting room and they were like, why haven't you eaten? I was like, because I can't. And that was the moment when I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to shift over to a different GP because I'm not being heard.
Yeah.
And at about 16, 17 weeks, I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum. And in hindsight, I know that that's too late. I got diagnosed way too late. And I mean, for some, that's actually quite early. People get diagnosed way later. But for me, getting into the rhythm of medication and all the fluids and things that I needed, my body was too far gone. Like it's sort of this cycle of nausea and vomiting constantly. And I'm talking like every 5-10 minutes, not just like a couple here and there. It was constant.
So it's almost like your body began to develop almost like muscle memory to what it should be doing, because that's like a good 3-month period of that.
And it didn't stop. So I think the only shining light was that I don't know how I got this information, because this is like 2018, you know, it wasn't really spoken about much. But I did know that this amazing service called Mama in Kensington was available. And I knew, even before I was diagnosed, I knew that that's what I wanted. I wanted a private midwife. I wanted that support. And I really knew nothing about pregnancy or birth, but I knew that that's what I wanted. And they were such an amazing support during that time, as much as anyone can be, because it's a hard one, because there's only so much you can do as an outsider for someone suffering with HG.
Do you think that the disappointment of that initial GP led you to more of a knowing of wanting services or something similar to Mama, and that you had to take your power back?
Yeah, I think it was more just being able to feel comfortable with, I think I really like consistency, and it's, you know, trauma and things like that around hospitals, I just never felt comfortable. And I remember it was also another experience where I was at the women's waiting area where there's like 100 other pregnant women, and I'm lying on the floor absolutely like grey, like my skin was grey and just so sick, and I was just lying on the floor in this waiting room surrounded by all these other pregnant women that were, you know, going through their journey, but I was just like, I looked like death. And I just remember thinking, I am just a number in the system. No one's actually taking care of me. And that's when I knew, I was like, I know that I need that one-on-one care, and that's what Mama gave me. And they also were able to give me fluids when I needed it, which it helped a little bit, but just for a few hours, which, you know, honestly, it felt like days, because it was just
for anyone who's listening that doesn't know what about because some of our listeners wouldn't even know about hyperemesis.
Yeah, we should. So
what? What is it by definition, and also how did the fluids? What is the role of fluids?
Yeah,
because there could also be people out there who are suffering and don't know that fluids are an option.
So, hyperemesis gravidarum is severe vomiting and nausea through pregnancy, and it's a spectrum, and I really am so clear with this, because there are so many people that have suffered with it without being diagnosed because, it wasn't that bad. You know, and then they look back at it going, well, actually, you know, I did actually vomit, you know, 10 times a day. Yeah, that's not normal. But I was able to do this. Yeah, but that's still not normal. But even like, but I didn't vomit, but the nausea literally had me bedridden. That's still HG. So it's a spectrum. And I think this is the most important thing that we're trying to get across, is that your suffering is your suffering. So if it's affecting your life in a way that is in any way not normal, you need support, you need help. And there's on Hyperemesis Australia's website, we do have this thing called the puke scale, and the name it's PUQ, but it's funny. You have to laugh or you cry, but
exactly.
It kind of calculates just the severity, I guess. But
to make some sort of an assessment for yourself prior to.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're curious about
Exactly.
is this normal, is this not, go to the puke scale.
Yes, and
Amazing.
see what that entails.
Yeah,
and I think the most important thing is if you're feeling constant nausea and it's still within the first trimester, that is fine. Not fine, but that is still serious. We need to take that seriously. Technically, it's when you're past 16 weeks that it heads into the official HGO diagnosis.
Right.
But me personally, I call bull on that. I think it's...
Yeah, because you felt like you were diagnosed too late.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is too late.
Well, you would think so. You can't consistently just function like that for yourself, let alone then growing another human inside you.
Exactly. And it's also about being proactive about going into your pregnancy, and I'll touch on that with my second, is having a plan in place on how to manage it. There's no cure. There is research happening, but it's in its very infancy, and, you know, you can't do trials on pregnant.
Because one of them's injecting Botox into a part of your spine.
Oh, well,
right?
that
turns off.
I would love to try doing that. But honestly, like, we'll try anything.
Yeah.
But this was more about there's a gene and it's a whole complicated thing, but it's still not a cure. But it's about managing the symptoms because we can't do anything else. And so if you're doing it early on, you have a better chance of managing it. It doesn't mean it's better or it gets worse. It's more that you can kind of have some sort of functionality in your life.
And sometimes the awareness is the greatest thing.
Yeah. And just knowing how much you can do and can't do, and talking to people in your life about it and getting the support you need. So it's a hard one because I can't just say there's a magic pill that you can take, and that's the hardest thing there's plenty of medication you can take, and I've taken it all, but yeah, it's a hard one. And so with that, with your care plan, fluids is really important because, I mean, think about when you've got gastro, you're super dehydrated, vomiting that often, or even having nausea to the point that you can't eat or drink, which is some people don't really understand that, but it is a real thing. You become dehydrated so quickly, and you're also growing a little human, and your body is already being drained of its nutrients. So the baby is taking everything from you, and then you're left with nothing. And so this is when fluids helps to boost up your just to give you a little bit of a boost of that hydration. But the thing is, it's not just a once off. You don't just go in once and then you're done. It needs to be like regularly, like weekly, multiple times a week to actually feel any kind of long standing effect.
And is that covered by Medicare?
Yes, I believe it is. I can't quote me on that.
Sure.
However, the problem that we're finding is that you have these, you know, these women are going to emergency at the very, like, the breaking point, right?
Yeah.
Not at the start. It's breaking point. And then they're not treated seriously. They're just not. The amount of times that I have spoken with hundreds and hundreds of HG survivors who tell me the same thing is that they get to ED, you know, you'll just be in a waiting line. You could be waiting 8 hours for trying to get fluids because it's not taken seriously. And unless you have this unicorn of a nurse or doctor that have suffered HG who understand, then you will hopefully get seen a lot sooner. But more often than not, unfortunately, they're waiting in this, you know, in a horrible emergency room or in triage, vomiting and needing the care that they need, only just to get a bag of fluids, and that may help, or they might get, you know, some ondansetron in there too, but it just doesn't hit the same way.
So once you were diagnosed, then how did you manage that? What was
My care was basically through mama.
Okay.
So I got prescriptions filled through my GP, and the GP that I had was amazing. She really did take it seriously. She supported. I took so much time off work because I just couldn't
function.
Yeah. And so we had a plan in place, but just didn't quite, I got through it basically. And then coming out of that, it was funny because side note, with Mama, they are predominantly home birthing midwifery services. I had it in my head that I really wanted to, I don't like hospitals, but I was so scared that the HG was going to affect my birth because I just kept thinking, imagine how sick I'm going to be when I'm in labor. I just can't imagine doing that. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll have a hospital birth because they can give me stuff. But the whole time I never really imagined myself birthing in the hospital. So when it cut to me in labor and I was like, nope, I'm staying at home. And I ended up having a spontaneous home birth, and it was amazing. Wow. I love birth. I'm obsessed with it, with my experiences anyway. And I am so lucky that I had such a powerful and, I don't know, just something that I really, after such a traumatic 9 months, to have a really special birth that kind of made me excited again to be having a baby. It was 3 hours, so it was a very quick,
Did your midwife make it?
Pardon?
Did your midwife make it?
So she just, as Ali was crowning, she'd come in and she's like, oh, okay,
we're on.
Yep.
In the garage, right?
No,
was it in the garage? No, it wasn't. That was someone else.
It was in our bedroom.
Okay. I'm picturing
I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I could not imagine. It was so instinctual. I was like, no, we're having the baby here. And yeah, she arrived and it was great, and she was like, yep, game on, and it was fine. It was all good.
Did you have any time to plan for birth and amongst your, being so unwell, or was this all just so? Yeah,
no, I did.
Yeah, good.
Because the only thing that kept me going was that there was an end in sight.
Yeah.
There's something there. I couldn't do anything about my pregnancy. So I was like, okay, birth. And I did not even think about postpartum in the first one. And because it wasn't a buzzword then,
But you were also managing this.
Yes. Well, this is the other thing. So we were told back then that once you birth the baby in the placenta, it's gone. HG's gone. You feel amazing. It's gone. I was like, okay, so I just have to get through that and I'll feel normal again. And to be honest, once I did birth the placenta, my midwife was like, there's this cloud has just lifted off you. You're not grey anymore. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I do feel like this switch has been turned off. And it was like, adrenaline and, all the things
Oxytocin.
So much. It was just amazing. It was very fast. So it was very oh my gosh, it's over. And then cut to me 3 months, probably sooner, but 3 months down the track, I had severe postpartum depletion. And again, no idea why, but I do now. And I was like, oh, I don't understand this. What is this? Why am I just feeling so a shell of a human with this little baby? And I suffered, whatever comes with that kind of depletion. And it took me a good few years to kind of realize what that was. And it's, you're going through up to 9 months of absolute depletion already. And you go into birth in -0, beyond that. And then you come out of birth so far into this depletion but you don't realize it because of that adrenaline rush. You're just like, I feel great. And you do. I wanted to go out and wander around. I wanted to be upright and living my life again. And I pushed myself too hard because I'd spent so much time at home wrapped around a toilet bowl, literally, that I thought, I'm free, I'm myself again. And then cut to me being like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? And it was because you just can't survive going into postpartum without that thinking about, okay, what do I need? Because HG has just taken so much from you. And then birth is just this, marathon. Doesn't matter how short or long it is, it's still taking so much from you as well. So then it's so common, and we see this so much, and we've talked about this as well, is that more often than not, HG survivors are coming out into their postpartum and will have depletion at some point, and it's so severe.
I remember you saying to me, it's like you had to relearn how to eat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there were certain foods that were trigger foods that you couldn't eat while you were pregnant because of how they felt when they came up.
Still to this day.
That you can't eat anymore.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and water as well.
That's what I was going to ask. After you birthed, how was your immediate recovery after that?
The first time it was a blur. Like I was like, oh, I can eat toast, yay. And it felt good. And I was like, I could eat food again. However, I started realizing, oh, I'm not drinking as much water as I should because I'm avoiding it because I'm just so used to it. Like the smell of water makes you feel sick. Brushing your teeth makes you vomit. Like I didn't brush my teeth for the whole time. Like there is, dental work that like needs to be done because of like the acid. Like, my throat was burnt from acid. Like,
and your gut health would just be so
disgusting.
I think we speak about this in one of our episodes with Vaughan, how when you've suffered from hyperemesis, you've got your gut health is just gone, and you have to build that back.
Yeah. And my body, I put on a lot of weight that I wasn't used to because my body was in this like famine mode.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you're eating again. I'm going to hold on to it because who knows, you might start vomiting again. And it's just this weird sort of realization going, oh, so, breastfeeding isn't going to make me, bounce back, or like all these like weird things that I was just like this reality, like slapping you in the face kind of thing.
It's all the aftershocks of what HG.
Yeah. But I only really realized that in hindsight now.
Yeah.
So once I started preparing, to go back, this was also once Alia was like 1, I opened Big Little Things and I got connected to Caitlin from Hyperemesis Australia, and she had just opened it at the same time, and because she wanted to raise awareness about it. And I had done heaps of my own research around it, realizing that there wasn't actually anything out there, especially within Australia, about it. There was only like, Princess Kate had it, and that was about it.
That was the first time that
everyone was like, oh, that condition that she had.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, but,
So what did you do the second time around? What did you do differently when you had the benefit of hindsight?
Yeah. So, I mean, it took me a really long time to come round to the idea of even having another one, which was really heartbreaking because I wanted more. The thing is I loved birth, so I knew that I had something, and obviously having a baby, but I knew I could look forward to something, having experienced that, which I'm so, so grateful for. But I still was so traumatized. The PTSD coming out of HG is real, and it still to this day. And I was just like, look, I have so much more knowledge now. I know that I want more support with my postpartum, and I'd done so much work with Big Little Things around that. So many beautiful services like Mama Goodness started popping up, and just, the postpartum doula suddenly was a word that we knew. It was in our vocabulary, and I just knew that I had more resources, more support. I knew that Mama was across it after my experience as well. And I felt, okay, look, I've got all these people. I know what I need to do. What I can't control anything else. I do know that I will have HG. So this is another thing. It's like an 80% chance once you do have it, you'll have it again. And we do find that there are people that have, 3 pregnancies of no HG, and then they'll have one. But that's a unicorn experience. It's very much like once you have it, any subsequent pregnancies, you'll probably have a form of it later on. And so I was like, cool. 80% people are like, oh, but what about the 20%? It's like, no, I'm going to stick with the fact that I probably will have it, and let's just base my care around that. So,
which is not an enticing.
No, it's like going into battle.
To go in.
No. It was honestly preparing for battle. And I, talked to my GP, and I talked to the mama team, and I was like, okay, how are we doing
Let's
do this. And so I found out I was pregnant before I did the test because I started vomiting at 5 weeks. The nausea hit way harder than the first one, and it was like an instant moment of going, I just cried because I was like, oh my God, I just remembered how bad it was. Like you kind of trauma block lots of things. And then until you're in it again, you're like, oh my God, like this is we're doing this. This is my rest of the next 9 months. And it's like, okay.
I kind of feel sick for you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like and going into that must have been such a mindset.
Oh, yeah.
thing.
But then it almost like it just went out the window because I was like, it just hit me so hard. And the hardest thing about it was that I had obviously my first, and she was 2, turning 3, and I missed that whole year of her life, and I just wasn't functioning as a mum, as a business owner, which was so stressful. It was just like, this is 2021 Melbourne, so COVID, no one could come see us within the 20k radius. I vividly remember that because my dad lived 21 k's out, and I just felt it was such a weird time because I was so supported. I had mama who were just, my angels. I had, the knowledge. I had Caitlin who, even though is in Sydney, she was messaging me every day to check in on me. I had people who had, I'd spoken about it so often for the past 3 years between my last pregnancy about HG. People knew. So I very much told them this is what it is. You have to really take me seriously and I may not exist for the next, X amount of time. And so even with all of that, it was the hardest pregnancy. The HG was next level. It puts the first one into perspective of being it was bad, but this one was shocking. I fractured my ribs vomiting at 36 weeks. So I went into labor with fractured ribs. That's how violent it was. And the nausea was just beyond, I can't even describe it. I was bedridden for majority of the time. I couldn't get fluids properly because my veins were so flat. I had scars because, they're so gentle, but there's only so much gentle you can do with trying to get IV in, and it was just so traumatizing. And it reached a point, so I had iron deficiencies, I had an iron transfusion, I had a glimpse. So I was planning for a home birth with the second one, so I knew I wasn't going to hospital, but I had to get this iron infusion, at the hospital, and it was this glimpse, very slight glimpse of what I'm so glad I wasn't doing because they just treated me they literally said to me, how are you doing? And I was like, oh, I have HG. And they're like, oh, anything else? I was like, no, that's about it. As I'm trying not to pass out and vomit. And I just remember going, I've made the right decision. I know that I'm very privileged to be able to do this, but I'm so glad that majority of my care was just through mama and through private midwifery and planning a home birth because I knew I could do it. Nothing was going to change that. But that was I just remember thinking, actually in the same room that I was getting my infusion was another HG sufferer. And I remember hearing a doctor say to her, try ginger or something. It was a ginger mark. And you just don't say that to a HG sufferer. And I wanted to scream, except I was vomiting. But I just remember looking at her going, I hope you're okay. I wish I could help you, but I can't right now. And I just know that is just happening right now, and that just lit up something in me. But I got to 36 weeks, had my ribs fracture, which was ridiculous. I went to my chiro and I said to her, I'm really struggling to breathe. And she was like, yeah, I cannot believe this, but you've fractured ribs. How? And I was like, well, I vomited pretty violently this morning. And she's like, yeah, she was just blown away. And we just you either laugh or cry in this situation. And we just laughed because if I cried, I probably wouldn't be able to stop crying. And then I got to, and this whole time I just felt so like I was failing at everything, like my business, my mum life, and then I got to 38 weeks, and it was was it 38 weeks? Yeah. 3 days before the earthquake in Melbourne that happened, my waters broke that night, and I thought, oh, finally, yes. And I actually didn't experience that waters breaking in my first, so it was kind of cool. And then nothing happened. And I was like, okay, why is nothing happening? And so my midwife was like, okay, we'll just check and see. And so I had prom. So basically premature rupture of membrane. So my waters broke, and for 3 days they just kept leaking. I was
vomiting, trickling water,
gushing like from vomiting.
Yanika.
It was. I literally at that point, I just surrendered to this is.
Well, what else would you do? Right?
I was
You'd just be like, I'm done.
Oh
right?
yeah, I was so done, and it was just wild. Like it was the longest 3 days, even though the past 9 months had been so horrific. I was like holding my ribs, and I was vomiting, gushing fluid.
Oh my goodness,
like it's sorry for the TMI, but it was just ridiculous at that point. And I know that I reached a point where it was one more day and we'd probably have to go to hospital just because of the risk of infection, things like that. But my beautiful midwife was like, we're just going to let you go a little bit longer and we'll see if, something doesn't happen. And it did. So the day the earthquake happened, that night I went into labour. I was watching some comedy, and which was, my way of I tried everything, like all these wild, it was so funny, things that I was doing to try and get it going. And I was just laughing, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm in labour. And within, again, 3.5 hours, I birthed Amara at home.
What a beautiful name.
Yeah, thank you. But it was such a hard labour. Even though it was quite short, she was back. She was posterior. Yeah. So that was a new experience. And
just to add one more thing to you.
I know, the rib pain, didn't feel that. I was so worried about it. I didn't need to worry about that. But I really remember this moment, and I always cry when I say this, so I'm going to try not to. But my midwife came to me when I was, through a surge or something, and I was just going through it, and she rubbed my back and said, Yanika, it's almost over. You've made it. And so sorry.
Don't be sorry.
That was just such a validation of it's finally over. Sorry.
No, don't
be sorry.
I can't tell that. I don't know why I tell that because I know that I'm going to cry, but it's just such a pivotal moment. Sorry, I definitely need tissue.
We have tissues for this exact reason. They should have been on the table already.
Sorry. Let me just
No, don't be sorry. It's fine.
But it was such an important, sorry, I just hit the mic. It was just it was a moment of going, oh, I'm finally doing it. It's done. Yeah. I can deal with birth. And although the whole time I was like, I can't do this. I was like, what are you, this is so out of body because I was just so exhausted. My body was I was just so depleted. Nothing compared to, it was just, I really felt that utter shell of a human whilst birthing, which is such a awful thing to feel. But the thing that I also did prior to all of this was connect with Jess because I wanted to have my postpartum planned and really that solid care, because I knew from, the years between my first postpartum and going into this pregnancy, I knew that I needed to have postpartum support and really intense care. And I was like, we invested in, we said to people, if you're going to buy us anything, like I own a baby and mum store, please don't buy me anything, but give us, donate to our postpartum doula fund so that I can have the care that I need.
What a great idea.
Best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it was just, I knew that I needed it, but it wasn't until, I'm going to cry again, Jess was in my life that it was just, it was like, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I'm wondering if we should wrap now and then we can talk about your second postpartum and your work with Hyperemesis Australia in our next episode.
Sure.
We'll give you a minute and we will we'll be back next week, everyone. Thank you for listening.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.